everyone, thank you for watching Edupedia World videos. So far we have completed 5 parts in this CTS, the change in the transport system. Okay, so this is the part 6 where we learn about transport strategy. Now, till now we have learned the different terminologies. Okay, we have first started with the different types of data we have in the system, customizing, repository. Okay, then we have learned about a system landscape. Okay, so generally we go for a 3. Okay, development, quality and production. Now after that, in the next video we have studied about transport organizer. Okay, so how the transport organizer is built. The transport organizer is, it completely works with the repository and the customizing tools. So you can navigate from repository and customizing tools to the transport organizer and vice versa. You can navigate from the transport organizer to the repository and the customizing tools. Now then we have seen what is a change request is. So whatever creations you do or modifications you do, so you have to include it in a change request. That is important. Then next we have studied about the transport management system. Okay, so TMS, it centrally manages all the imports and the it takes care everything about starting from the release of the change request until it's imported into the production system. So everything like what all SAP can facilitate for transport, that is taken care by the transport management system, the central tool. Then next we have studied about the routes, the consolidation and the delivery routes. Okay, and in the last video we have seen about transport layers. We have a standard transport layer and SAP transport layer. Now we learn about transport strategy. Now you have a project running, so the change request moves from development, it's created in the development box, it comes to quality and then it goes to production. So this movement, okay, you can control it, you can control it in your own way. Okay, so we'll learn like how that movement is done, the schedules, the transport schedules and the import queues. We learn what are the types of, what are the import queues we have in the transport management system. So if different developers work on the same project, dependencies may arise between the objects that belong to the project. So that developments are consistent in other systems, all the changes made by developers must be transported at the same time. Now you have a project. Okay, so in that project, to divide the work, to facilitate this transport of various objects which are modified and created newly, we have the concept of change request. So each developer, they work on the tasks we have in the change request. Okay, now, and we know that there will be some dependencies among the objects. Okay, so in order to make sure that these developments are consistent, okay, so all the changes which are made should be transported at the same time, otherwise you may cause inconsistencies. For example, if a developer creates a table that references a data element created by another developer, the change request that contains the table is imported in the target system in which the data element does not exist, the import will encounter errors. Yes, we know. You have created something, a table which references some data element, okay, and another developer is working on the data element. So before first that data element should be transported and then this table. Okay, so if that sequence is missed or something, then in the production system you will encounter many errors and that will impact the business process. Okay, so it will affect their cost. That's why whenever the transports are released, they are imported, it is very important that the sequence, the dependencies must be taken care, especially in a production system where the business will be impacted. say if any mistake was done in the test system or the QA or some demo, it is okay. But in the production system, if because of some dependencies or by mistake a wrong transport goes in, it will impact the customer business. So we should take care about the dependencies and the sequence in which the transports are imported. One way of keeping these dependencies under control is to have a fixed transport schedule in which all the changes released up until a certain fixed data transported into a client or an SAP system. This method is particularly suitable for the early phases of the SAP project where many changes are being made into the system. A transport schedule in the system landscape with the development system, quality assurance, and the production system could be as follows. Now, all changes are imported once an hour into the quality assurance system, and all requests are imported once a week into the plant production system. So, one way to keep under control is what we do. All the changes are being done and they are released from the production system. Okay, so once they are released, the import is not done now and then, but you lay some transport schedule. You say like every hour the request will be imported, or in the production system generally every week all the requests will be collected and imported, because we give sufficient time. If there are any dependencies, then we have to find out what are those dependencies, okay, and then only we have to import them into the production system. This schedule lets the developers test their changes almost immediately in the QA system and correct any errors. The developers' aim is to consolidate their changes in the QA system before they are due to be imported into the production system. Business process can be tested in the QA, and it may also be used for holding training courses. Periodic transports of all changes made to the system reduces the work of system administrator and keeps your system synchronized. Okay, so all the changes are imported into the QA more frequently, like maybe once an hour, or for every 2 hours once they are imported, so that in QA, okay, regressive testing is done regressively, and then only they are all collected in the QA box, they are kept for a week, and then only they are imported into the production system. Okay, so this reduces the work of the system administrator and it keeps your systems synchronized. So now any request, first it has to be released. You make a change. That change will be under part of a change request. You change any object, you create a new object, it belongs to a change request. So first you have to release the change request from the development system. Then only it will be available in the import queues. That's what. Now in the next slide we learn about what an import queue is. Okay, so once you release the request, it will be in the import queue of the QA. It doesn't get imported. Okay, so you have to perform the import, then only it goes into the system. That's what. Now we'll see what an import queue is. Any changes that your development teams make to the customizing or repository objects in the development system are not automatically transported into the target systems such as QA and production. When they are released, when a developer releases the change request, it's only placed in the import queue of the target system. This makes it possible to gather changes in the development system in the import queue over a period of time and then import them together into the target system such as QA. The request imports places the request in the import queues of the target system such as production and training systems. You can make exports and imports into different target systems at different times and with different frequencies. So this concept is a beautiful concept of SAP. So whenever a change, what all things you create or modify, that change request, when you release, first you have to release it. Unless it is released, it is not ready for transport. So first, the developer has to release his request. then what happens? It goes and sits in the import queue. So you have already set up the transport route, right? So it will check like, oh, from this development I have to go to the quality system. So it will go and sit in the import queue of the target system. It doesn't get imported. You have to trigger the import. Okay, so it's either done manually or through different, you have various transport tools, or you schedule jobs, whatever it is. So there should be a trigger for all the requests sitting in the import queues to get actually imported into the system. So don't worry, like if you find any erroneous request in the import queue, okay, you can delete it. Unless it is actually imported in the system, the changes will not get active, they will not be active. Okay, so that is about import queue. So once it's imported into the QA, then it goes and sits, okay, so in the production, it will be ready for import in the production. So there also again you have to trigger the imports for the objects to be actually, the change request to be imported into the production system. Now this will allow you, for example, to import a fully tested version of your new developments into your production system at the time you previously announced to all users. So in production system, generally every week they import the requests. Okay, so all the requests, they come and sit in the import queue. Okay, and on the planned date the requests will be imported. So there the administrator should take care of the sequence. So developer will say like, see, I have these 3 requests, okay, so please take care of the sequence. Okay, and in end, the order in which they'll be available for import is the order in which they were released. So that's why first the developer has to, if there are any dependencies, he has to release the request properly. If the request was, is mixed, then he has to tell the administrators like, see, please import this first and then import this. So he has to provide the sequence to the administrators. Now, import queues can be used as a transition between development and administration. All changes released by developers can be seen immediately by the administrator in the queues. The TMS provides easy to use functions for displaying and editing the import queues. So that's what, whenever developers they release the change request, it will be available in the import queues, so immediately administrators can see. And in this import queue, as I said earlier, you can probably delete the request, or you can check what the transport is, okay, and moreover you can import them in the sequence you want. All these things, okay, SAP provides you with all those functions, and it helps administrators to move the transports correctly. Import queues are a particularly good way of automating transports in your system landscape. They can significantly reduce the amount of work for the system administrators responsible for a large number of transports. Automation reduces the administration tasks related to monitoring and troubleshooting. So through import queues, okay, you can also also automate the transports. Okay, so you have various tools like a transport express, okay, RevTrack. These are the examples of transport tools. Okay, so these are third-party tools which are built into the SAP. So there you can beautifully you can customize how you want the transports to flow. So that tool takes all the transports from SAP. Okay, so at every stage, say like that, once it's released, it will be available in the QA. So once you approve it, then only it moves to the import queue. Okay, then it gets imported. Similarly, after getting imported in the QA, it will wait for approval into production. Okay, if you use some third-party tools, then you can automate how your transport gets imported in your own way. So this makes the administrator work easy. Okay, So that's how. So the in SAP, so it gives the concept of import queues. Okay, so you can use third-party tools like Transport Express or whatever it is, and they will take all the imports from SAP. These third-party tools, they work with SAP. Okay, so whatever import queue you have in the SAP and the TMS, okay, that is collected by the third-party tool, and there you can customize it according to your own business needs. Okay, so unless there you can put extra steps like, see, now a developer has released the request. Now in SAP it will be waiting in the import queue of the QA. Okay, but there you can add extra step like you have to approve it to get imported into the QA box. Similarly for production, first you have to approve it, then only it will get imported into the production system. So like that you can add extra steps so that the transports are imported in correct order. Okay, so from the import queues also, like if the transport fails or if it's successful or if it's waiting, okay, you can see the log also, all these things. So that's why TMS, the central TMS tool, helps from in SAP, the central TMS, okay, tool, it shows you everything regarding the transports. Okay, what data the transport has, okay, then what systems it has been already imported, which systems it's waiting to be imported, okay, the log of the okay, once imported, what the log it shows, everything it shows. Okay, so SAP also provides many transaction codes to check, view, monitor and administrate the transport. Similarly, you can have third-party tools with, okay, where you can build them with SAP, and there also you can customize this transport movements as per your business needs. Now you can choose between two procedures when you use the import queues to perform imports. You can import mass transports into your system. This procedure imports all requests waiting for import in the queue. All requests are imported into the target systems in the order they were exported. This minimizes the risk of errors in the target system caused by requests being imported in wrong order and the risk of objects being missed in the target system. Now, mass imports means if you open the transaction code for the TMS, if you go to a particular system and see the import queue, you have many requests which are waiting. So the first type is the mass transport, where you click the mass transport button, then all the requests which are waiting get imported in the order they were exported. Okay, so that is mass transport. The other one is single transports. This procedure makes a selection of requests from the import queue and imports them into the target system. The other requests remain in the import queue, where you can choose to import them later or not at all. Single imports are most flexible method, however they demand more administration. Now single transports means you manually select and import one transport at a time, but here you should be very careful because you might miss the sequence, or you might import a transport first, a dependency transport first, and then the other one. Okay, then it might cause some problems. Okay, the main aim of transport management system, if you use third-party tools or if you do the imports in SAP, everything is first the order should be taken care, the dependencies and the order. If that misses somewhere, you will get various errors. That's why whenever we work on transports, okay, we should be very careful, we should be very cautious and do the imports. That's why in mass transports you see the entire import queue list. Okay, so all of them get imported one by one depending on the order they were exported from the source system. Okay, at single transport means you just select one transport and import it. So in this case, there might, if you select one and import, probably you might end up importing a wrong one first and then the first one, the second one first. Probably you have imported the second one first and then imported the first one. The order was wrong. Okay, so that's why SAP says like you do mass transports. Okay, so that's why when they are exported, they set in the import queue in the order they were exported. So the mass transport imports them one by one in order they were exported. But when you do a single transport import, you have to be very careful that we take care about dependencies. Now, if you want to maintain a production system with specific transports, it's best to import single requests rather than importing all changes waiting for import. Use single transports if you have fewer changes to the transport and your organization prevents you from having a fixed transport schedule. This method usually entails extra work for the administrator compared to periodic imports. Developers need to pay extra attention to the consistency of their change requests since the CTS does not offer much support in this area. If a small number of developers working on a project or if developers work very closely with administrator, they often make their own single transports. So the single transport is very good. It's very easy that you select the request and import it. But the SAP will not tell you like, this has to be imported first and this has to be imported second. The developer has to first release them in that order and tell the administrator to import them in that order. When doing single imports, okay, or if you just select the mass import button, of course the way in order in which you have exported, they will be imported in the same order. That's then only SAP takes care. Okay, so first thing is like developer should release them in the proper order. Okay, and if single imports are done, then the administrator also should know that order and import the transports in that order only. Okay, and single imports, when they come into picture, when there is an emergency transport, okay, whenever there is an urgent business need, okay, so generally in production systems, they lay a schedule that all the transports are imported once in a week, okay, but in the middle of the week or sometime when an emergency change has to go in the production system, then what they do is only that change they import into the production system. So then a single import is done. That is one case where the single imports are handled by the basis team. And you want to make specific single transports into your system, but would rather have this done by the system administrator, we recommend that you use the transport workflow. This method automatically triggers a workflow when you release a change request. The workflow ensures close communication between development and administration. So, when the single imports are handled, okay, you can create a transport workflow. That means whenever a developer releases a request, okay, mail is triggered to the administrator workflow. Okay, so in the coming videos we'll learn about what is a SAP workflow is. It's nothing but whenever a process is happening, a business process is running in the SAP system, okay, at relevant stages you get notifications. That's known as a workflow. Okay, so similarly when a request is released by the developer, you can schedule a transport workflow where a workflow means like a notification goes to the administrator. Okay, so then at least like even though if somebody forgets, the developer or the administrator, at least they'll have a reference that, oh, see, this was exported, this was released first, okay, this transport request was released first, yes, now this transport, the second one is released. So he can check his notifications and then do the imports accordingly. Okay, but in a real-time scenario, okay, we don't suggest we don't go for single imports. Generally the transports are planned, they are scheduled once in a week in the production system, and mass imports are only done. Okay, so this is about transport strategy. The entire aim of whatever we are talking now, like you do a single import or you do a mass import or whatever it is, okay, once first thing, a developer has to release the request, and if there are any dependencies, all those should be released in the proper order. So once a request is released, it doesn't get actually imported into the target system. It goes and sits in the import queues. So we have the concept of import queues here. Okay, and all the requests which are sitting in the import queues can be imported once, that is through mass transports. Then they are imported in the order they were released from the development system. Okay, and a single transport import means you manually select the transport from the import queue one by one and import them. Okay, but in this case we have to be very careful to choose the order. Okay, so the development and the administrator should work closely while they are doing single transport imports. Okay, so that's why here we have learned about import queues now. Okay, so in the next videos we'll see what are the transactions we have in SAP for all this, like how to check the repository and customizing data, then the transport organizer transactions. Okay, then for TMS, the transport management system, what is the transaction? Okay, so how to check the transport routes and layers. Okay, and where to see the import queues. TMS is a central tool. Okay, so from any system you view it, you can see all other systems and all other systems import queues, and you can perform various actions like in doing import, checking the log, all these things. Okay, so the TMS in a system landscape, the TMS is always a central tool. Okay, and we have also discussed about the transport domains. Groups means the systems which are having common transport directory. Okay, and finally in this video we have learned about import queues and the two types of imports, the mass import and the single import, which are done in SAP. So and we have learned about transport workflow also. Okay, so all these videos, whatever we have discussed about the CTS, okay, we have learned various terminologies. Okay, so when we talk about TMS in SAP, the transport management system, one must be familiar with all these terminology. Okay, so in the coming videos we'll learn the transactions and we'll see like how actually we have to do the transports. Okay, thank you.